I came to showcase my art, not to get treated like a criminal by a power-tripping cop. One wrong move and the whole gallery turned into a battlefield. Curious how it all blew up? Stay tuned. All right, let me set the stage for you. Picture this, a bustling art gallery in New York City, the kind of place where people sip wine and pretend to understand the deeper meaning of a splatter of paint on canvas. That's where I was, standing next to my piece, this massive abstract painting that I poured my soul into. Bold colors, sharp lines, the whole vibe screamed freedom. And here I am, 24-year-old Skylar Jones, trying to keep my cool while a bunch of critics and collectors whisper about how profound my work is. It was a big deal, like life-changing big deal. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, this cop walks in. Not just any cop, a tall, stiff, middle-aged white dude with a face like he just chewed on a lemon. You know the type, radiates, "I'm the law" energy, even when he's not talking. He locks eyes on me and my stomach immediately drops. Why? No idea. But something about the way he marched over, all business and no smile, told me my day was about to go straight to hell. "Miss," he says, loud enough to make half the room turn and stare, "we've received a report about a security issue. I need to search your belongings." I blinked at him, trying to process what he just said. Search me? Here, in the middle of an art gallery? It felt like a joke, except nobody was laughing. The whispers in the crowd got louder, and I swear I saw someone pull out their phone to start recording. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. "A security issue in here? What, did someone think I smuggled a Picasso under my dress?" He didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, this isn't optional. Step aside and cooperate, or I'll have to escalate this." Escalate? Dude, what the fuck? I glanced around the room, hoping someone, anyone, would step in and tell him how insane this was. Instead, people just stood there, frozen like deer in headlights, their wine glasses dangling awkwardly in their hands. Typical. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm one of the artists here. That's my painting right there. There's obviously been some mistake." But he wasn't hearing it. "Miss, this is your last warning. Step aside and let me do my job." "Oh, hell no." My heart was racing, my hands were shaking, but I wasn't about to let him humiliate me like that. I squared my shoulders and said, "Fine, go ahead, search me. But when you find absolutely nothing, you better apologize." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. He grabbed my bag off the floor and started rummaging through it like he was digging for gold. My sketch pad, brushes, tubes of paint, all dumped onto a nearby table in plain view of everyone. And then, because of course, he found a can of spray paint. "What's this?" he asked, holding it up like it was a grenade. "It's paint," I snapped. "You know, for making art. Kind of a big deal in a place like this." His eyes narrowed, and for a second I thought he might actually arrest me for possession of paint. The absurdity of it all made my blood boil. "You have no right to treat me like this," I said, my voice rising. "I haven't done anything wrong. You're harassing me because of how I look. Admit it." The crowd started murmuring louder, and someone finally spoke up. "She's telling the truth. She's one of the featured artists. This is ridiculous." But the cop wasn't backing down. He set the can on the table and said, "We'll see about that. Now I'm going to need you to step outside with me for further questioning." "Further questioning?" I laughed bitterly. "You've already trashed my stuff and made me look like a criminal in front of everyone. What else do you want, my fingerprints?" He didn't respond. Instead, he motioned for backup, and two more officers, just as grim and intimidating, appeared at the door. My chest tightened. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. As they loomed closer, I heard someone whisper, "This is wrong. Someone needs to do something." Yeah, no kidding. But who? Everyone seemed too scared to intervene, and I was too furious to think straight. All I knew was that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "Okay, so let me paint you a picture here." I'm standing there, humiliated, pissed off, and trying not to scream while this cop, this walking embodiment of bad decisions, keeps digging through my stuff like he's on an episode of Cops Gallery Edition. The room is dead silent except for the sound of my brushes clattering onto the table and the occasional gasp from the crowd. I could feel their eyes burning into me, half in sympathy, half in morbid curiosity. "You know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but failing miserably, "you could at least pretend to know what you're looking for. What's next? Are you going to frisk me for suspicious art supplies?" The guy ignored me. Of course he did. He had that look, the one that said he didn't need to explain himself to anyone, least of all me. It was infuriating. And to make it worse, he kept glancing at the crowd like he was putting on a damn show. One of the gallery staff finally worked up the nerve to approach. A young woman in a sleek black dress, probably an intern, because no one else looked stressed enough to care, stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Excuse me, officer," she said, trying to sound polite, But Miss Jones is a featured artist here. She's not a security threat. The cop didn't even look at her. Instead, he held up the can of spray paint he'd found earlier, turning it over in his hand like it was evidence in a murder trial. Not a security threat? He said, finally addressing her, but with the kind of condescension that made my blood boil. This is spray paint. Do you know how much damage something like this can do? Before she could answer, I jumped in. Yeah, it can make murals, street art, and I don't know, actual gallery pieces. You know, like the ones hanging on these walls? A few people in the crowd chuckled, but most just looked uncomfortable. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. And me? I was fuming. My hands were clenched into fists, and I could feel my pulse in my ears. That's enough, the cop snapped, his tone sharper now. If you've got nothing to hide, Miss Jones, then why are you so defensive? Defensive, I shot back, my voice rising. You just dumped my life onto a table in front of 50 strangers and accused me of God knows what. Of course I'm defensive. You're treating me like a criminal for existing in a space you don't think I belong in. The room fell silent again. A few people shifted uncomfortably, and I caught someone mouthing, "She's right," but no one dared to speak up louder. Figures. And then, as if the universe couldn't resist making things worse, one of the cop's buddies walked over. A younger guy, probably in his late 20s, with a smug grin that made me want to punch him in the face. "Hey, Dave," he said, addressing the first cop. "What's going on here? You need backup?" "Backup? Are you kidding me? It's an art gallery, not a hostage situation." "Just handling a potential threat," Dave replied. Like I was some kind of ticking time bomb. At that, I couldn't hold back anymore. "A potential threat? Seriously? What do you think I'm going to do, spray paint a Monet? This is insane." The younger cop smirked. "Relax, sweetheart. We're just doing our job." Sweetheart. Oh, he did not just say that. "I'm not your sweetheart," I snapped, stepping forward. "And if your job is to harass innocent people while ignoring the actual crimes happening out there, then congratulations. You're killing it." For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt in Dave's eyes. Maybe he realized how ridiculous this whole thing looked. But if he did, he didn't let it show. Instead, he doubled down. "Miss Jones," he said coldly, "I'm going to ask you one last time to cooperate. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to detain you." "Detain me? For what? Breathing too loudly?" At this point, the crowd was starting to turn. People were muttering, shaking their heads, and a few even stepped closer, clearly debating whether to intervene. One older man in a tweed jacket finally spoke up. "This is absurd," he said, his voice firm. "This young woman is an artist. She's here to share her work, not to be harassed. You're out of line." Dave turned to him, his jaw tightening. "Sir, I suggest you stay out of this. It's a matter of security." "Security," the man shot back. "Security from what? Creativity?" The tension in the room was about to explode, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me. My instincts were screaming at me to fight back, to say something that would shut them down once and for all. But before I could, someone else stepped forward. A woman with a camera phone pointed directly at Dave. "This is all being recorded," she said loudly. "You better be damn sure you're in the right, officer, because this is going viral." Dave froze, his eyes darting to the camera. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The younger cop shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if suddenly realizing they were outnumbered. I crossed my arms, glaring at both of them. "Well," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What's it gonna be, officer? You gonna arrest me? Or are you finally gonna admit you screwed up? To be continued." Let me tell you, I was done playing nice. Officer Buzzkill had already humiliated me in front of everyone, and now he was doubling down like he'd found a treasure map in my spray can. The crowd had grown, phones were out, and the whispers were getting louder. The tension was like a rubber band stretched to its limit, ready to snap. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut through the murmurs. "You're turning an art gallery into a circus. What's next? A SWAT team for my sketch pad?" The younger cop, who I'd mentally dubbed Officer Sidekick, smirked. "Look, ma'am, if you cooperate, this will all go away faster." "Faster?" I shot back. "You're dragging this out like it's the crime of the century. Spoiler alert, it's not." The older cop, Buzzkill himself, straightened up, clearly annoyed. "Miss Jones, if you don't calm down, I'll have no choice but to detain you." The word detain hit like a slap. "Detain me? For what?" I glanced around the room, catching the worried looks of a few gallery staff. One woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Officer," she said cautiously, "this is all a misunderstanding. Miss Jones is one of the featured artists here. There's no reason to—" He cut her off. "Ma'am, step back. This doesn't concern you." It was like gasoline on a fire. The crowd started shifting, a few people muttering things like "unbelievable" and "this has to stop." Someone even said, "She's right." This is harassment. And then, like clockwork, the cameras came out. One woman stepped closer, her phone pointed right at Buzzkill's face. "Smile for the internet," she said dryly. "This is going live." That did it. Buzzkill froze for a second, his confidence flickering. The younger cop looked nervous, glancing around like he was realizing they'd lost the room. "Ma'am?" Buzzkill finally said, his tone less sure now. "We're just following protocol." "Protocol?" I snapped. "Is that what you call it when you treat an artist like a criminal? Because it looks a hell of a lot like racism to me." The murmurs turned into full-on outrage. People were shaking their heads, stepping closer, demanding answers. The gallery's curator finally pushed through the crowd, looking horrified. "This is unacceptable," he said, addressing the officers. "You need to leave, now." For the first time, Buzzkill seemed to hesitate. He glanced at the phones recording him, at the crowd growing more restless by the second. The walls were closing in, and he knew it. But instead of apologizing or backing down, he muttered something under his breath, shoved my bag back onto the table, and signaled to his sidekick. "We're done here," he said curtly, turning to leave. "Damn right you are," I called after him, my voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through me. "And don't think for a second this is over." The crowd erupted in cheers as the cops left, and I felt a wave of relief and anger all at once. The damage was done, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Just when I thought the circus had packed up and left, the energy in the room shifted. The crowd was still buzzing. Some people cheering, others venting their outrage, when a deep, commanding voice cut through the noise. "What the hell is going on here?" Heads turned in unison, and there he was. My dad, Chief Jonathan Jones. A tall, no-nonsense man in a sharp suit that practically screamed authority. His expression was a mix of confusion and fury, and honestly, it was the first time all night I felt a flicker of hope. Buzzkill froze mid-step, his face draining of color. "Chief Jones," he stammered, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Oh yeah, now you're scared." My dad's gaze swept the room, landing on me, the mess on the table, and the crowd of onlookers. "Skylar," he said, his voice calm but firm, "are you okay?" "Not really," I replied, crossing my arms. These clowns decided to turn my art show into a crime scene. Dad's eyes narrowed, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He turned to Buzzkill, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Care to explain why you were harassing my daughter?" Buzzkill stumbled over his words. "Sir, we received a report of a security issue, and I was just following—" "Following what?" Dad interrupted, his voice razor sharp. "A hunch? Or was it the fact that she doesn't look like the rest of your usual suspects? Because from where I'm standing, this looks a hell of a lot like profiling." Buzzkill opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Sidekick, meanwhile, looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. The crowd was eating it up. Someone muttered, "Damn, he's laying it on thick," while others nodded in approval. "I'm sorry, Chief," Buzzkill finally managed. "It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Dad's voice boomed. And I swear the walls shook. "You humiliated my daughter, disrupted this event, and made a fool of yourself. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's incompetence." Buzzkill looked like he might pass out. Sidekick, realizing the only way out was through, muttered, "We'll leave now, sir." "You're damn right you will," Dad snapped, "and you'll be hearing from my office about this." The two officers practically ran out, tails between their legs, and the room erupted in applause. For the first time all night, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. My dad turned to me, his face softening. "You okay, kid?" he asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Yeah," I said, finally letting out a shaky breath. "Thanks, Dad." "Don't thank me," he said with a small smile. "Thank yourself for standing your ground. Proud of you, Sky." The crowd started dispersing, the energy shifting from chaos to quiet support. People came up to me, offering words of encouragement and praise. Someone even said they'd buy my painting, which was nice, considering the spray paint debacle. As the night wound down, I realized something. Yeah, the evening had been a nightmare, but it also showed me what I was made of. And while the fight wasn't over, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to back down.